listening out.
Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrea Sampson, and I'm the CEO and founder of Talk Boutique and the Thought Leader Academy. And today I've got a very special guest joining me, Darius Bashar. Darius, who I have known for many years and is one of my favorite humans on the planet. Darius is a celebrated photographer who works with international celebrities, best-selling authors, and thought leaders, the likes of Seth Godin, Liz Gilbert, Jim Quick, Lisa Nichols, and many, many others. His work has been featured in world-class publications like Time, Apple, Forbes, USA Today, and even Oprah.com. Darius' specialty is working with speakers, authors, and thought leaders, and his signature photography experiences are his heart shots and black and white experience. I've had the pleasure of doing both of those with Darius. And if you've seen my image on any of these, it was Darius who took that shot. So he is an amazing, amazing artist and a thought leader. He also founded the Artist Morning, which is an international community of artists, creators, and meditators. Can be found is it on Insights Timer? It is, isn't it? And YouTube for sure.
Yep, both.
Yeah. He's led and facilitated over 500 group meditations. I think that must put you in the 10,000 hours. It has to.
And that number is actually outdated.
Yeah. And he has he is working with some of the most important people on our planet. So I am really, really pleased to have Darius here with us. And we're talking today about artist or thought leader. Why do we have to choose? And Darius and I had a great conversation about this a couple of weeks ago. We were sort of talking about, well, what are we going to talk about? And, I talk a lot about thought leaders, and Darius talks a lot about artists. And it was interesting because I do consider Darius both an artist and a thought leader. And as we delved into that, it became really, really interesting. And we thought, well, let's bring this to LinkedIn. Let's go a little deeper. So Darius, because I consider you both, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your journey first as an artist, and then we'll get to the thought leader side. So tell us a little bit about, have you always considered yourself an artist?
Most definitely not. Yeah. Thank you for having me. Thanks for that warm welcome. I didn't. I resisted it deeply. For a very long time, I was what you call a shadow artist. So just like something attracted me to the arts, whether it was in an ad agency or film production company or whatever, all the different creators I had. But it was like, oh, it's not me. That's not me. I can't do art. I can help. I can support. I can be a strategist. I can be a producer. But art is for those people, and I'm not those people. And as we've been talking over the course of a few weeks around this concept of thought leader, I saw that connection between how much I resisted. First, I resisted photographer because it's like, who am I to call myself a photographer? Actually, the first resistance was entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur. And then something happens and you're like, obviously I am. Then I'm not a photographer. And then obviously I am. And then this artist thing, and I'm just entered my fourth floor in my 40s. And I feel like this thought leader that you call me and some people call me that I'm resistant to. And I'm like, I'm not a thought leader. I'm like, maybe I don't need to resist as hard and as long for this one because you're really clear about what it is. And it's really helpful to hear all the work you've been doing on the topic.
Yeah, I love hearing your journey, and I know you and I have spoken about this. Like, I have gone through the similar journey of so many people have called me an artist in my career, and I was the same. I'm not an artist. I make things, I do things, but I'm not an artist. I definitely didn't consider myself an entrepreneur until just a few years ago. So I know that
you,
yeah,
bonkers.
This is it. I think this is a challenge that most of us have, is that others see us in ways that we resist. And when we resist it, what happens is we deny our own happiness in many ways. And I know for me, as I stepped into allowing myself to be seen as both an entrepreneur and an artist and a thought leader in many cases, it suddenly I took on a new seriousness in the work that I do. For you, as you step into now thought leader, and I know that this is a big title, people are really confused by it, and I'll tell our audience what I think of a thought leader. I think a thought leader is somebody who influences others, and I think that thought leadership is one of the things that we need to make more accessible, because the reality is we need more thought leaders in this world, because thought leaders contribute to creating the future that we want.
Mhm.
And when we reserve it for only the select few, what we're doing is we're limiting our ability to create a future that we all want. Because thought leaders, unfortunately, when we look at who we call thought leaders today, they're usually pretty homogeneous, let's just say. They probably don't look like you, they probably don't look like me. And that's the challenge, because there's more of me's and you's out in the world than the thought leaders that we assign that title. And so if we want a future that is inclusive and is sustainable and that serves everyone who lives within it, then we need thought leaders who are contributing to that. So you might be a thought leader in your family, helping somebody to see the world just a little bit differently. That person may grow up to be somebody, a thought leader in their community. And that person might, influence somebody else who now becomes a thought leader in an industry. Every time each one of us uses our voice as a thought leader, what we're doing is we're creating impact through the ripple of our ideas and through the ripple of our cultural background, our diverse ways in which we see the world. And so that is, for me, what thought leadership is. And so as you think about your stepping into this and who you are as a thought leader, tell me a little bit about what it is, that the impact that you're creating through your words and through your images, because I think that your art is incredibly influential.
Mm. Yeah, I've honestly spent the last week thinking about this concept of thought leader, because I work with so many thought leaders and they're different than myself. And there's something about what you're saying around that's okay. I think where we're at with the world, we need diverse thought leaders that actually represent our world. Um, the other piece is like you have some sort of value in innovation in the thoughts that are influencing people, right? There's something, and it doesn't necessarily, this was the part that I feel like I had a breakthrough this week. It's like, it's not just I have a TED talk and here is my idea. It can also be a process. It can also be
Mhm.
an experience that is innovative and that is transformative. And when I look at it through that lens, I'm like, my heart shot experience is very, very different, and it does create influence and impact. But you know what? Like, it's not a TED talk,
Right.
so it's like there's this beautiful new world that I feel like you are really leading in, that's expanding people's perceptions of what thought leadership is. Like thought leadership within your family. Wow, that's fascinating. It's like we have different spheres that you have to be actually be impacting people. And I like the part where you added that they have communities, right? And that community could
Mhm.
be 3 people, it could be 3 million people. But there's people that are listening to this individual because they're feeling the impact of what they have to share, and it can look and feel like many different things. And so from that lens, I'm trying to help people slow these things down, these very, very brilliant, fast moving things, so that we can go into our heart space and express some deep expression of our souls. And I work with very intelligent people that are very, very busy, and getting them to slow down so that they can feel sometimes takes some effort, and that's what the process around that is. And on the surface, it's like so many of the things we talk about, like photos are just looking pretty, just look pretty. Of course, that's not what it is. It's about giving people an opportunity to look at themselves and witness themselves and hear themselves and celebrate themselves. And so I love that. I love creating spaces where people can see their humans and reconnect with themselves and remember how brilliant, how radiant, how beautiful they've always been.
Mhm. It brings me to actually a client that both of us work with. When I think about thought leadership, I mean, we've just talked about sort of all of the ways in which it impacts people, and then the community aspect of it. But there is another piece to it, of course, which is the personal brand piece. And so, thought leadership is about having an idea that you can express in a way that you're putting out in the world. It's about then representing that idea through the personal brand that you put forward. And it's then working within the communities who you serve and who serve you for them to support and amplify your message.
Mhm.
And what the person who came to mind as you were speaking is Sandra Elia, who we both worked with. And Sandra is an expert in addiction, and specifically food addiction. And what I loved about the work you did with her, she was in the process of publishing her first book,
Mhm.
and I know you did the photography for her,
Yeah.
and it was an absolutely stunning set of photographs that she shared with me. And what I think it did for her, but also for all of us, is that this message that she had, her book, I believe, is called Never Enough. And what we saw in these images was this beautiful, beautiful woman who was clearly enough. And yet, this book that was all about never enough and the juxtaposition through it. And I could tell, because I know your process. Your process is so incredible of helping people to slow down, helping them to lose the camera, really, right? You no longer see the camera anymore, and it really just becomes a conversation between you and that person. And I could see that with Sandra. You really created that environment for her,
Mm.
and what resulted was incredible. Tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, as I hear you talk about it, I can feel the piece that I'm just obsessed with. For my own life, for all my clients, it's like, what is it about the human experience that makes it so hard for us to see ourselves, our true selves? It's like, why does it take so long for you to accept that you're an entrepreneur, or me to accept that I'm an artist? Like, it's like from the outside, it looks absolutely ludicrous. It's like, of course you're an entrepreneur, and then we can teach that to other people, but it's like, it's so hard to see our own kindness, our own brilliance, our own, we get caught up in that. And with her, there was just so much there. There's so much just brilliance and vulnerability and honesty. And my process is often the same. It's like, before we get the cameras out, let's slow down and let's create a deep dive experience. I call it. It's like a 2-hour session where we're on Zoom, and it's like, let's create a little space for us to pull in key moments from your past and bring them into the present, so we can celebrate them and like actually like
Mhm.
be honest with how far you've come, because this is the furthest you've ever been. And then let's go into the future and pull in future you's energy and bring it into the present, and like get a little cheat sheet about where you're going. And I use meditation and guided visualizations to bring that energy and make it about the people you're going to serve, because we all get caught up in, how would I look, and what if I'm this, and what if I'm that. I'm like, step out of that and remember that there's going to be someone else seeing these photos, that's going through these things, that's feeling fear about these things, that's feeling excited about these things, and they see these photos and they feel hope that something else is possible. When I get people out of their own heads and remember that these things are going to create an impact on the communities they serve, there's a grounding that they access that's very different. And they stop stressing about the things that nobody else in the world can see but them. But again, like the head loves to go fast and the heart thrives when we can slow down.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Joel, loving this. I need a future me. Joel, I think that was exactly where I was going to go as well, because I think there's something so incredibly powerful about what you just said around the future me. And there's 2 points I want to sort of drill down on. One was the fact that, you talk about mirrors, and I think mirrors are a really important, it's an important word, and it's something that we often forget, is that everybody around us is actually a mirror for us. For me, you're a mirror for me, I'm a mirror for you. And we see ourselves in each other. And I think as a photographer, you act as a mirror in a completely different way, in that you're capturing what for me, what I can't see in myself. You're capturing me in the way in which you see me. And there's something so incredibly powerful about that, as the person now looking at themselves through this other mirror and realizing that that's actually how they show up in the world. And then the point of the future me, and again, if I go back to Sandra, I think that's exactly what I saw in those images of her, because I was working with her at the time when you were doing that. And I remember seeing those shots and going, wow, that is, it is Sandra. It is Sandra who I see there, but I see this future version of her. So tell us about that experience. How do you bring the future me in?
Yeah, I'm gonna be real with you. It often starts with a prayer. I have these artist prayers, these creative prayers I do, and they're really simple. It's just like, it's like, dear God, thank you for this opportunity, this studio, this person that trusts me, this day where I get to create this fresh canvas, and like help me see her, help her see me, help us see ourselves, and help us see ourselves in each other. And then this thing happens where it's like, you are me, I am you, we
Wow.
are, like, and then the last part of it is then like, and help us see God in everything. And I don't use God in a religious form. I use it,
Right.
it's like expansive, and it's like, it's just a reminder that it's a blessing to have someone here, and we get to see each other and be with each other, and be there through that process. And so there's just this moment where the camera disappears and the people disappear, and it's just energy, and it's just energy.
Mhm.
And I don't fully understand how all of it works. I'm just really grateful that I get to do this. And the first few I did, I was like, that was a fluke. People tried to book me like years ago when I put the first photos. I'm like, no, 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 I don't know how to do that. I'm not going to take anyone's money. I just crossed 1 million photos, and I'm like, okay, it wasn't a fluke. It can be reproduced, and it's not 100% structured. It's just like this balance between, for me, creativity is an infinite waterfall, which sounds great, but it's also overwhelming. You can take photos of
Mhm.
everything. Now, add a little structure, the right amount of structure, through process, through questions, through strategy. And when you open that waterfall for creativity come through, it comes through and goes somewhere specific that's usually connected to this person having impact on someone, and also their income growing so they can continue doing this work. And so it's trying to find the right amount of structure so it's not stifling, but it's also not overwhelming. When you combine flow and structure, magical things happen.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking to myself, like, you are a thought leader. You're just describing this process that is yours. First of all, this is something of your creation, um, and it's your creation because of how you have interacted with others. It has given you ideas, thoughts, new ways of seeing the world and seeing other people. And that process is so unique to you because of you. And that's what's key. It is that idea that through seeing somebody in a way that they don't see themselves, because you have created an environment that allows them to be fully present in who they are, who they were, and who they will be.
Mm.
You have now created something that is replicable by you, but truthfully by no one else. And that's thought leadership. And even though it is through the lens of photography, what that's doing is it's giving us both an idea, but also the result of that idea through the images, which is so cool. And it is the ultimate juxtaposition or intersection of art and thought leadership.
So here's the other thing I'm noticing about that is like the same. I got goosebumps literally. The same way I used to think, and so many people in my artist morning community think this. It's like art happens on this canvas, happens on that stage, you know, that is art. But art is everywhere. Every day, all of us have an opportunity to create something with our lives. You know, even that story you have that I am not creative, I am not an artist. Guess what? That's a story. That's a creation.
Total story.
And so I'm seeing right now the gift you have given me over the course of the last conversations we've had is I was stuck with thought leader is a TED talk, is a boardroom workshop. But guess what? Just like art is everywhere, thoughts are everywhere. And even a process is thought leadership. As long as I think there are still rules to it. It's like there's something innovative that you're bringing that's creating impact and influence. And there's a community element that's you're supporting and they're supporting this belief around it. And I think the really interesting thing is it's like this super unique entry into the thought leadership that on the exit of it is actually just a universal truth. You know, they all come back to these universal truths. So it's like my unique heart shot process that comes back to this universal truth that all of us just want to be seen and witnessed in the world. And all of us are a little terrified. What will happen if the world sees me? You know, that intersection is such a fascinating place for me. So thank you for expanding my understanding of thought leadership.
Yeah, well, you know, I think you just described it really well. You know, it does start, of course, with a message, an idea. And I always say that, you know, you have to have an idea. And I think ideas are one of those things that are the most misunderstood thing in the world, because we put ideas out there either as something really small that, hey, I got an idea, let's do this thing, or something really big and way out of my control. And there's no way that I'd have an idea that would change the world. And yet you know, it's neither of those things. Ideas are neither small nor large. They just are. The difference is that they have impact and that they're unique to you. So it starts with that unique idea that comes from your unique background, your unique knowledge, your unique culture, your unique setting, you know, and that there is something that you've identified that only you can identify, that only you can bring to the world. So it starts there. But we also have to believe ourselves that in fact we are that idea is meaningful and impactful. We've got to be able to articulate it. We've got to bring our full self to that idea and actually show up. And this is where, you know, the imagery is so important. You know, when we see ourselves in our full sense of who we are, that allows us to now actually start to articulate that idea in new ways. And then we bring it to our community. And I think this is, you know, I'm going to come back to this because I think community is such an important aspect of thought leadership, because it is where we learn the power of our ideas, of our thought leadership. Because we go into our communities, and sometimes they're communities we've created, and sometimes they're communities that we're part of. But when we bring our ideas into those communities, what happens is we hear it said back to us in new ways. And suddenly that thought leadership, it starts to get refined. It starts to get clearer. It starts to take on a new life. And I think that's what I know for you, because I've watched you over the years. I've seen you grow. I've seen you take this incredible gift you have, and it's the gift of seeing others. And you know, you do it through photography, you do it through videography, but you also do it through who you are. And that gift of being able to see others has refined over time because you've brought it and used it and offered it and given it in such a way that others have given you feedback. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. As I hear you talk, it reminds me of, like, it's like kind of like I'm going to go be a stand-up comedian, and I'm going to practice by telling my jokes to an empty audience. You need the feedback. You need to feel the energy, good, bad, negative, whatever it is. And it's scary to do it in front of people. And you don't need to do it in front of 1,000 people. Artist Morning started with one person, a very close person to both of us. Brilliant. And I was like, I have this wacky idea. I have no idea if it's going to work. Will you, come join me online? And one person became 3 people and 5 people and 10 people and 20 people. And now we're at like 30,000 plus people meditating every month with us.
Incredible.
But it starts, and like, if I didn't have her early feedback, it was going in a completely different direction. And I think it's important who you pick to be your early community. And there's a science to that too, of like, you want someone that will be honest with you, but early on also like constructive. So you don't want people that are just like, amazing, everything you do is amazing, you're incredible,
Yeah.
incredible. But you also don't want people that are like, I don't know, is this gonna work?
Right.
So you need to find that your own Lillian, I call her day one Lillian, that can be honest with you and direct and give you constructive feedback. But even today, like, we had 120 people on a Zoom doing a meditation, and the part I was super doubtful of, like, oh, I messed up on that part, I wish I didn't. You go into the lounge and they're like, that was my favorite part. And so we can get lost sometimes on our own, and we need to create environments that can lift us up through honesty, done in a respectful way.
So we're coming up on the end. I can't believe a half an hour has gone. You and I could talk
For hours.
for hours, and we have,
Yeah.
and we have to plan another one of those because this is far too short, my friend. So as we wrap up, how can people stay in touch with you? The Artist Morning, I know, is an incredible community. You have heart shots and your black and white photography. How can they find you?
Sure. 2 main ways. DariusBashar.com will have everything you want to know about photography. My photography specializes in emerging thought leaders, so speakers, authors, coaches, artists. Everything you need to know is there. You can take a look. And then if you want to come join my meditation community where we meditate, journal, and celebrate together, artistmorning.com will have everything you need there.
Those are both powerful places. Make sure you do connect with Darius because he is a very special human. I think if you probably are getting a little bit of a sense of that today. Thank you, Darius, for being my guest. I so appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do that. And is there any last words you'd like to say to our guests?
One, I just want to say thank you. It's always fun talking to you. Yeah, the last thing I would want to say is this is the furthest you've ever come.
I love that thought.
You've never been this many days old. At some point today, ask your phone, hey Siri, how many days from insert your birthday? And she just told me, I just surpassed 15,000 days. I've never got this far, and for me, that's a celebration because not everyone gets this far in this game we call human. So remember that you've come real far, further than you've ever been, and be kind and good to yourself. And no one knows how many more days we have. So if there's something your heart wants to do in this world, something it wants to say or express, now is your time.
Thank you for that. And check out in the show notes below, you'll find all of the links to Darius's pieces. And we are launching our YouTube channel, by the way, on Monday. We're going to have the links down below for that. So make sure you check it out. It's the Thought Leader Academy on YouTube. And we will be live again on March 5th with Anita Stuenroch. And we are going to be talking about the power of multi-hyphenate personal brand. Now, that probably is a little bit interesting. I would think. I love the idea of being multi-hyphenate because it is a superpower. So make sure that you are joining us live on March 5th, where we're going to chat about how, as a multi-hyphenate person, you can introduce and talk about yourself. Now, I know I work with a lot of multi-hyphenate people. I know that both Darius and I are both multi-hyphenate.
Most definitely.
So I will leave that with you and look forward to seeing you then. I will say one last thank you to my guest today, Darius Bashar, and I hope to see you all in 2 weeks.
See you guys.